Hello there, and welcome once again to the Mayor's Magazine. I'm Mick Cornett, the Mayor of Oklahoma City, and this is our program for July of 2014. In our first segment, we're going to meet with President John Desteiguer of Oklahoma Christian. He's been with the university quite some time, the president the last few years, and he's got an interesting capital campaign going on that I think is really going to allow us to continue to invest in that part of the city. So, President Desteiguer, welcome back to the show.
Mayor, it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
And it's such an honor to have you on this show because not only the front office and the faculty at your school, but I continually run into graduates of Oklahoma Christian, and they could have graduated 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 1 year ago, and so many are making a mark on this community. So you all should be very proud of the product that you're putting out into the community.
Well, Mayor, thank you for that. I tell you what we're really proud of. We have students that come from all across the nation, from all across the world, and they want to stay here in Oklahoma City. So that's to your credit and the city leaders of Oklahoma City. They want to stay here in central Oklahoma when they graduate, and we're thrilled about that.
Your location is unique, but I mean, if you're looking for ways to take advantage of that, I would assume you're able to. It is in the northwest part of Oklahoma City, just barely actually in the city limit lines, but very close to Edmond. And so I would just think geographically you're able to count on a great consumer base of high school seniors.
I mean, that's exactly right. We're actually surrounded on three sides by Edmond. Many of our faculty and staff live in Edmond, but we are an Oklahoma City university, and I don't think there's a better place for a university to be located than where we are right now.
And you got a capital campaign going, so how's that shaping up?
We do. It's all of 2 weeks old, and it's a special and unique capital campaign. In fact, our university is unique for a number of reasons. Mayor Cornett, we are actually experiencing record enrollment. Our projections suggest that we will have record enrollment again in 2 months when classes begin. 80% of our undergraduates live on campus.
And that's a high percentage.
It is a very high percentage. You just don't find that in many places, and we're proud of that. We're also proud of the community feel that we have. Every day, every morning, our students and faculty and staff come together in a chapel setting, and again, that's not something you see very often. This capital campaign is different and unique itself. Most universities that engage in a capital campaign, it is for a multiple number of years, a very large dollar amount. There's a quiet phase where really you don't know what's happening in the campaign. We've kind of turned all of that on its head. This is a one-year capital campaign. There are a limited number of projects. We're raising dollars that will be invested and spent for our students' experience this year in academic areas, in programs, in capital needs that the university has. And everything is transparent. On the website, it tells us exactly how much we've raised and for what programs. So we've kind of changed everything about this capital campaign, and we're pretty excited about it.
New buildings could be the result of this?
Well, some renovations. We've decided right now that cost is very important to us. We have gone for the last 2 years without raising any prices at the university. Going into this next year, we're going up 3%. So over the last 3 years, about a 1% increase on average. Again, you won't find that many places. Rather than building new buildings, we're taking the buildings that we have and we're making them new again. So we find that to be more cost effective, and that's what we're trying to pass on to our students.
And I'm guessing technology is part of the improvements you need to make, because it's where everybody's got to keep investing.
Well, that's right, and we've been a wireless campus now for about 15 years, and we're very proud of that, and that's going to continue as well.
Which departments at your university are drawing the most attention from students?
Right. Probably our greatest growth areas are engineering. We have 3 accredited engineering programs and great employers here in our community that want to hire our graduates. Our sciences programs, if students want to go to medical school, they have a great chance to get there once they've completed our regimen of study. In fact, it's close to 100%. And then also in business, we're doing a lot of great stuff in the business area. Students that graduate there also have great futures ahead. But we have nursing, we have language and literature, we have lots of other good programs, but those are some of our major growth areas.
Do you have advanced degree offerings?
We do. We have master's programs in engineering, in business administration, and also in theology.
About how many graduates do you have in your alumni roles that you keep in touch with?
Wow, that's a great question. We were founded in 1950 in Bartlesville, moved to our present location in 1958, and we have about 20,000 graduates. That's not a lot compared to a lot of schools, but they're pretty loyal, and that's very, very good for us.
What can people do if they want to be a part of it or find out more information about your school?
Well, first, you can come to campus because we want you to come and visit campus. In fact, I want to especially invite you, Mayor Cornett. You're a runner. You spend a lot of time outside. We've got a 3.1-mile trail, Eagle Trail, that goes around the perimeter of the campus, and the community loves it. So make yourself available and come and run with us sometime there.
Sounds like it's about 5 kilometers.
It is, exactly. So folks can come to the campus and visit, but they also can go to our website, and if they want to talk to us about this campaign, they can call me anytime.
Are there scholarships typically available for a student who's looking at your school?
There are. Most all of our students receive scholarship offers and assistance to help them defray the cost of university at Oklahoma Christian.
All right, and we're going to put your website information on the screen so people can check that out.
Great.
Thanks very much, and good luck in the Capitol campaign.
Well, thanks for helping make this community just the ideal place for a university to be located.
It's Oklahoma Christian, and the president is John Desteiguer. Thanks for all you're doing for our community.
Thanks, Mayor.
All right. We'll have more on the Mayor's Magazine right after this.
In Oklahoma, the sights and sounds of severe weather are all too familiar.
I'm Frank Barnes, Oklahoma City Emergency Manager. In Oklahoma City, the sirens sound when the National Weather Service issues a tornado warning that includes Oklahoma City.
That's your signal to take shelter and seek information about the tornado that has been detected.
You may hear the sirens more than once. They sound each time a new warning is issued. And remember, there is no all-clear signal. Always monitor the weather conditions until the threat has passed.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Magazine. In this second segment, we're going to visit with Larry Heyman. He's with OKC Harvest. Larry, welcome to the Mayor's Magazine.
Thank you for having me.
Boy, this is a great idea. I have long thought that we've got to figure out a way to get back to our roots. And, you know, we almost have a lost generation here because so many of our parents or grandparents were on a farm, especially in Oklahoma. And, you know, so many have urbanized now and kind of lost touch,
Exactly.
you know, with that element of life. And there are so many good qualities that can be taught to young people by living that rural lifestyle. And it seems to me like that's some of what you're trying to bring back into the urban environment.
That's exactly what we're doing. We're dealing with groups of children who haven't spent a significant amount of time in gardens, who may or may not actually know where their food comes from, and frankly, whose nutrition is suffering from the absence of garden and from the absence of accessible fruits and vegetables. And so one of the things that we thought was, as an educational nonprofit, it would be such a great idea for us to be able to come into schoolyards, plant gardens in schoolyards, use them as outdoor classrooms, allow the teachers to develop lessons and ideas around the gardens, and not only teach earth sciences and biology and planting, but also teach social studies and reading and math and simple things like problem-solving skills. And so instead of having the garden be something that they go on a field trip to visit, it's something that they walk out into the schoolyard and they can harvest fruits and vegetables and see how things grow and learn about the planting seasons and learn about sustainability and learn about what foods are local to our area.
So it sounds like you're not bringing a garden into the classroom, you're taking the classroom into the garden.
Exactly. They're outdoor classrooms. That's what we call them.
Give me some examples. What is a kid who hasn't been exposed to that rural environment, what are they missing?
Well, I mean, one of the things that they're missing is just seeing the progress. It teaches the kids about watching the progress of plants growing and how they produce vegetables and fruit. They may not necessarily have ever seen it happen. And so the other thing that it teaches them is that lettuce, things that lots of kids pick off hamburgers, grows out of the ground, and it shows them the way things grow and ripen and the way the seasons change, and it just gives them a sort of a sense of immediacy that you don't get if you're going to the grocery store. You may actually get if you're going to a farmer's market, but you don't get if you're going to the grocery store, and frankly you don't get if you don't spend time in a garden.
Which types of vegetables are conducive to this type of experience? Which ones do you find are the best ones for a lot of reasons?
For a lot of reasons, the root vegetables, carrots and radishes, but also things like onions, just because it's something where you plant it and it's almost like there's a certain age group, I'd say maybe 2nd to 4th graders, where they don't actually believe there's anything going on. And then they go out and they pull the carrot out.
Because all they see is the small thing on top.
All you see is the green. But the other things that onions, just because frankly, there are adults that don't know how onions grow or haven't seen them growing. And the fact that there are certain fruits and vegetables that grow well together, there are certain fruits and vegetables that don't look as though they're in the same family but actually are. An example that we give is watermelon and cucumber. Both come from the same family. They're cucurbits, and it's something where one of the other things that we teach is about the multiple growing seasons. The fact that from January to June we plant one type of fruit and vegetable, and then from August to October we plant others. And one of the great things that I've actually seen happen in schoolyard gardens is just the amazement when kids plant something as basic as sweet potatoes and see how many sweet potatoes come out of a single planting, out of a single basically pile of dirt. And in some situations, kids are able, an entire school is able to take something home with them.
Yeah.
So it's just a great way to sort of share that and to get the kids involved with it, and to get the kids involved with the idea that we can do this in our own backyards and our parents can work with us.
We may have 100 elementary schools inside the Oklahoma City limits, a relationship number of middle schools and high schools. You can't do it all. I mean, you're a startup.
Right.
What do you need to grow? What do you need to take this program to every kid in every part of the city?
Well, one of the great things about what we do is that we don't have to do it alone because we get volunteers from the schools. But right now what we really need is funding, because as a startup nonprofit, we're frankly not eligible for a lot of larger grants. So much of our funding is coming from private sources. And as we develop that, we are able to cultivate a volunteer corps at each of the groups that we go to plant. So we have lots of folks that are kind of eager to help us, but we really need people that are willing to sort of help spearhead the projects, and they can visit the website and click dig in, and it'll take them to a page where they fill out a simple form, and it will get them onto our email list. And we also need funding through the Communities Foundation of Oklahoma.
Can you mention a school or two where you're showing some early success?
Right now, Roosevelt Middle School has a 4-bed garden that's actually producing fruits and vegetables. And we also put we did a sample community garden, a 2-bed community garden at Temple B'nai Israel on Pennsylvania Avenue. And they're using it in the early childhood education program there, as well as the campers are getting involved with their gardens.
And we've spent all our time here talking about schools, but you are taking this approach to neighborhood organizations too.
Neighborhood organizations, other nonprofits, and therapeutic organizations that serve special needs children, organizations that serve people who may be in physical or occupational therapy and are interested in having a great outdoor space where people can work. We're taking it to them as well.
Yeah. Can you give me an anecdote or two from a kid who seemingly has had a light bulb go off when they've watched some of these programs in place?
Just specifically, very specifically, I worked in a school that had a culinary arts program, and an 8th grader came into the culinary arts classroom after school, and she was hungry, and the teacher said, "Well, you know where the food is?" And the child took a pair of scissors and a bowl and went down to the garden and cut a salad for herself out of the garden and brought it back to the classroom, washed it, plated it, prepped it, dressed it, and actually served one to the teacher as she was sitting down to have her own. And that's not something that we would have ever expected prior to having a garden on site. And the other great stories have to do with an experiment that we did where we asked the cafeteria to save out green waste so that we could compost. And we got a group of 2nd graders involved in composting. And they would fight over who got to go out and turn the compost bin because they wanted to see how dirt was made. And it's just such a great experience for kids that they realize that green waste and dried leaves and grass can be reconstituted and turned into compost.
What reaction are you getting from parents inside these programs?
We're getting great reaction. I was really just so pleased with the Roosevelt Garden build. We showed up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. We were fully expecting to be there until about 2 in the afternoon, and at 11:30 we were finished because parents and their children and local community members and teachers had all come out to build the garden. It was just amazing.
And
the
these
parents,
are in raised beds?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, we grow raised beds, and that's actually what we provide free of charge to the gardening organization. Is we provide the border material, the soil, and basically the construction of the raised beds. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, we've been able to provide the plants as well. But mm-hmm. in some cases, we ask the organization to sort of share the expense with us and
yeah.
plant the garden.
Sometimes you hear pushback from educators who say, look, these extracurricular activities are great ideas, and we agree that kids can learn from these things, but we have math and science, and we've got to keep focused on that. Have you run into any of that yet, or has most people been receptive to what you're trying to do?
I've run into it in the past. I haven't run into it in Oklahoma City. Most people are receptive to it, and what I basically say is that this isn't an extracurricular activity. This is a co-curricular activity. This is a teachable moment. This is a way to build a lesson. If we're attempting to fill a 4 by 12 foot long bed, 8 inches deep with garden soil, there's a math problem there. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about what fruits and vegetables will grow in our area, that's a social studies question. If we're asking children to follow steps to plant and care for a garden, that's reading. If we're asking a child to write about their experience, that's writing and reflection. So there are ways to incorporate all of that into the learning process, which is part of the reason why I refer to them as outdoor classrooms, or some people call them edible schoolyards, is just a great way to use them as an educational tool rather than as an extra activity.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to put your contact information on the screen, so if people can want to get in touch with Larry Heyman with the OKC Harvest, they'll be able to do so. And you heard his main need right now is funding. Certainly there are volunteer opportunities down the line, and as he grows the program, he'd love to get it in your school, whatever school that is. But right now, in the early startup phases, you can imagine there are some funding issues, and the more funding he's able to accumulate, the more schools he's going to be able to help, and the more kids he's going to be able to reach. So, Larry, thanks for what you're doing. I really believe in the process, and it fits into a topic we didn't get into here, and that's the health and well-being of the community. It starts with that next generation. You've got to build a culture that values health and nutrition, and this may be one of the primary building blocks. So thank what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
All right. Larry Heyman with the OKC Harvest. We'll be back one more segment on the Mayor's Magazine.
When you hear an outdoor warning siren in Oklahoma City, you should seek shelter and immediately get information from your TV, radio, computer, or phone.
In Oklahoma City, the sirens sound to warn you that weather conditions may produce a tornado. That's your signal to take shelter and seek information about where severe weather could strike. An all-clear signal does not sound, so always monitor the weather conditions until the threat has passed.
Having a plan is the most important thing you can do to keep you and your family safe. Remember to shelter in place. Go to your storm shelter or innermost room on the lowest level of your home. The more walls between you and the outside, the better. Whenever possible, stay out of your car. It's one of the most dangerous places to be during a tornado.
In addition to a plan, build an emergency supply kit. Our family home was destroyed by a tornado, and although we survived, we were left with nothing until help arrived. Don't wait until it's too late. Go to okc.gov/prepare to find more information on how to build the kit that could save your family's life.
Tornadoes can form at any time of the year. Be prepared, be informed, make a plan, and build a kit.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Magazine. In this final segment, we're going to learn more about the American Pigeon Museum. Lorrie Monteiro is here. She's the curator. Welcome to the Mayor's Magazine.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
My notes say this is the world's first public museum dedicated to domestic pigeons. Thank you so much for bringing this unique opportunity to Oklahoma City.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's very exciting to get the word out. I didn't know too much about this a couple years ago, and I have a lot more to learn, but it's an amazing thing. Been
vaguely aware of that the organization was here in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
Did not know they were intending to have this public exhibit, but it seems very exciting. So tell us, what can a visitor expect if they show up at the museum?
Well, we have a lot of military memorabilia, and we talk about, basically the museum is preserving the history of the domestic pigeon, and we're talking about the history of this bird with humankind from the beginning of time as we know in for records, through World War I and World War II to present day. And we're also preserving the history of the different clubs. There were racing pigeon clubs, there were fancy pigeon clubs, and we have a lot of their memorabilia. We have trophies and pictures and a lot of interesting things in the museum. Plus we have live birds, which are not there all the time, but the days we are open, they will be there.
Well, how far back can you trace pigeons being used for some sort of delivery service?
For delivery service, we can trace it back to Hannibal crossing the Alps. He brought pigeons with him, and in fact, when he invaded Italy, it was the invasion of a town called Modena, and so in Italy it's called the Siege of Modena, and they have pigeons that are called Modenas. It's a domestic pigeon, but they've been bred to look a little different. If you ask any pigeon fancier, they'll tell you as far back as Noah. And so we try to incorporate that into the history, and but all through history, Genghis Khan up into a lot in the 1800s. J. Paul Reuters with the news agency had pigeons, and our biggest right now is World War I and World War II. That's where we have most of the memorabilia.
Well,
but
let's
we do
talk
try
about
to
that, because that means the American military actually kind of adopted the sport or the activity and said, how can we use this for military gain? So what's the background there? Can we trace it to a single person's idea or a small committee that came up with the idea of using carrier pigeons?
Well, in World War I, the Americans were in France, and they were with British soldiers and French soldiers, and the British and the French were using pigeons, the Americans adopted that. Though Americans knew that you could use pigeons to relay messages, that's really when it started. And in fact, one of the most famous birds is Cherami, that was used in World War I. Was a British bird, and they gave it to the Americans. The Americans named him Cherami in tribute for being in France, and Cherami saved what is called the Lost Battalion. There's been movies made about it, but the Lost Battalion was a battalion that was not necessarily lost, but they were surrounded by enemy. And they had 3 pigeons left, and they sent an important message to save themselves back to base camp. And the first 2 pigeons, unfortunately, were shot down, so they had 1 left, and it was Cherami. They sent Cherami off, and Cherami was shot 3 times, but still got home in time to get the message to the troops, and they saved the Lost Battalion. And that's just a portion of the history.
Yeah. So the enemy was actually looking for carrier pigeon activity, and
yes,
yeah,
yes,
and was taking shots at them. And in World War II, did it vary much? Was there much difference between the way pigeons were used in World War I and the way they were used in World War II?
It was ramped up because at the end of World War I, the Americans just, realized that we needed to do something, and so they started what was called the Pigeon Corps, which is part of the U.S. Army Signal Corps. And so through the 1920s, they were training, they were building up their troops of pigeons. And in World War II, the Americans had 54,000 pigeons in service. They didn't all fly, some of them were breeding. But yes, it was much bigger in World War II. Wow.
And are there anecdotal experiences that you could relate from World War II where pigeons played a role?
Well, one of the most famous pigeons, American pigeons in World War II was G.I. Joe, and he, again, was the last pigeon that was left with a group of Allied forces. And there's a small town in Italy that had been taken over by the Germans, and the plans were ground forces would come in and bombers, Allied bombers would come in. Well, the ground forces got there a little ahead of schedule. Germans had retreated, and when the ground forces went to alert the bombers they didn't need them, their radios were down. So they had to depend on this one bird, praying that because that's all they had, to pray that he would get back. And as the story goes, the planes were on the tarmac, their props were going, and they were getting ready to fly, and G.I. Joe got home. He flew 20 miles in 20 minutes.
That's what a remarkable story.
So it is.
And following World War II, what happened to the program following World War II?
Well, they still had the program going on up into the 1950s, and in the Korean War there was some usage, but for the most part after the Korean War it was done.
Mm-hmm. It almost seems like with drone technology they're kind of going back to that same sort of experience to a certain extent. It's just a little more high tech.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any military use now with pigeons, or is it just typically history at this point?
For us, it's history in the United States, but I believe I've been told, but I couldn't tell you specifically. There are other countries that are still using them.
And so all of these stories, I assume, are being told at the American Pigeon, am I calling it right?
Yes, the American Pigeon
The
Museum.
American Pigeon Museum,
yes,
which is here in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
These stories and others are being told, and
yes,
is it an audio-visual experience, or is it?
We do have a theater set up where we show clips. We have different clips. I don't schedule anything right now, but if we have large groups, we'll put in, we'll have a set timetable for all of them. But we have a variety from raising the birds to the biology of the birds to, we even have a film called The Queen's Wings that was given to us by Jim Jenner, and it tells the history of the Queen's Loft. And in fact, the Queen's Loft donated a very unique pigeon basket to us for our museum. So there's a lot of interesting things in our museum for people to see, and I think people will learn a lot. And those who have been in come away with a new appreciation for this little bird.
Is this pretty much a sport of hobbyists now? What's keeping the momentum for the American pigeon?
Well, there's two groups of people that are involved in this. The American Pigeon Museum is about the domestic pigeon, and the domestic pigeon, the two groups are the racing homer, and obviously the name says it all, they race their birds. There's also a group called the National Pigeon Association, which are the fancy breeders, and all over the United States and all over the world there are people that breed the domestic pigeon, but they look a little different. Just like having dog shows, they have pigeon shows, and so you'll see a multitude of larger and smaller birds, different colors, different feathers, and so it's the two groups worldwide that continue today. And it's quite big. A lot of people who have come into the museum wonder why, does anybody in Oklahoma really do this? Well, it's all over the country, in the world.
Yeah, and what's the genesis here? Why is this located here, and why is the organization based here?
Well, from my understanding, from what I've heard from the past people that I work for, is years ago, it's about 30 years ago, they were looking for a prime location, and I believe they looked in Florida, Kansas, Texas, and California, I think, and obviously Oklahoma. And there were a few reasons. One, I've been told, was the Oklahoma community at that time made it very welcoming. The parcel we're on is right next to Remington Park, so it was a great location. And I think people realized it was kind of the center of the country, and it was just a great area to be, and they're very happy that they decided to do this.
All right, we're going to put your contact information on the screen, but tell us verbally, where is it located? If you want to drive there, where
Sure,
is it?
It's 2300 Northeast 63rd. We're just north of MLK, and south of 44 and east of MLK.
And if you're going to bring a group, a church group, Cub Scout group, neighborhood association,
just give me a call and I can give them a tour. We're open on Fridays and Saturdays from 10 to 4, but I will open by appointment. If people just call me, we can set up those tours.
All right. Lorrie Monteiro is the curator at the American Pigeon Museum. It's on Northeast 63rd Street in Oklahoma City. And I hope you'll make a habit this summer of taking your kids or grandkids out there to enjoy the experience. And if you're bringing a bunch of people, it sounds like you might want to give Lorrie a heads up, and she can make the experience worthwhile. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Mayor's Magazine. Thank you, Lorrie, for coming on and being such a pleasant guest. I want to thank our other guests as well, and I want to thank our producer, Steve Hill. But for all of us behind the Mayor's Magazine, I'm Mick Cornett, and we'll see you next month on another edition.